This week in the news, lots about forest fires, and today I brought someone in who knows a little bit about being in the forest. Now, wildfires are out of control because of budget cuts. This is what we're seeing here, and I want to talk about this with good old Marty up north. Marty, welcome. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, Clyde. Always good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here. And, you know, you spend a lot of time in the forest, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about this one. And we have many topics to talk about today, and I guess we're just going to start it off on the forest fires here in Canada, but we have a lot we're going to get to, so if you're tuning in, stick around. We've got a lot of coverage to do. But getting on the wildfires, it started, well, we've had all the ones in Alberta, and then it moved over to Quebec, and then Northwest Territories, and now British Columbia is all in the news. Kelowna and Shuswap. And these are areas where it's actually well known that forest fires happen, and they happen periodically, and they happen in quite substantial degree as well periodically. But my main focus on this one is we're seeing a lot of push from the Liberals and the NDP on the side of this is all climate change. This is all to do with climate change, and this is the reason why we need to push our policies and where our policies are going. But then we look at where the budgets have actually been over the past little while. They have been cutting, along with everyone else in government, all of the funding to fight forest fires, the thing that they say is caused by global warming.
And they're cutting in, to me, they're cutting in some of the wrong places. I do walk through the forest. I've been living in the shadow of the Rockies for 35 years, and fires, like in the good old days, we used to have guys up in fire towers. So come fire season, guys would people love living in those towers. They go there, and their whole day was spent just looking over for smoke. And fires are, we knew about fires, they happen. And what we would do is, as soon as we saw a fire, we'd send out this crash crew on helicopters and go fight the fire when it's small, and then get it under control quickly. So we are cutting. I know we're cutting in some bad areas, but maybe it's a little too difficult. But I wanted to bring, this week I posted a slide on Twitter, 2 slides that to me were interesting. And, a lot of people were making a big deal about the fact that we had more hectares burned in Canada this year than we had in previous years. And yeah, that's true. It looks like, in a typical year, we burn about 5 million hectares. And suddenly this year we burned 15 million. So I found that interesting. But then I went looking for my own data. And what I found really interesting is that we have less fires. So we have less fires over the last 30 years. The number of annual fires is going down. But now suddenly this year we have a giant, enormous fire. And so I'm trying to reconcile that. Fires are going down. So obviously it's not climate change because there's less and less and less fires. But now we have one big, giant, out of control season where we got a ton of fires that are not being fought. So, I'm trying to, and my question is why are these fires harder to control? And I asked is there something nefarious going on? It's not nefarious. I think the groups that fight these fires are underfunded, and then it was just inevitable. So we have a bad season, and it's getting out of control on the firefighters, who are probably exhausted at this point. I mean, yeah, it's been a bad year. But there is nefarious stuff going on, right? People are refusing to evacuate and perhaps making the conditions more difficult for the firefighters.
We're seeing reports, and I've been seeing this all over Twitter, is reports of people's gear being stolen from the caches where they need gear from. Yep. And right on the spot, people are coming in with dirt bikes. Reports are they're masked up and they're taking off with the gear. Reports from the Shuswap that the fire hydrants were shut off. They just shut them off. So people were going to gather water, and in my opinion, in these cases, it's hard not to think conspiratorially, right? Like we saw the same thing happen in Maui just a week prior, where right, perfect timing, winds come in, take out some of the infrastructure that's been let to rot, which is the electrical stuff, and when wires go down, the electricity company neglects to turn it off, and then they neglect to divert water in the right direction to mitigate these fires. It always comes to mind is, have you ever heard of the terms MIHOP and LIHOP? It's did they make it happen on purpose, or did they let it happen on purpose?
Yeah,
and those are the conspiratorial thinking, of course. But there are a lot of people. Yeah, there are a lot of people that have something to gain out of these situations, and that makes you think: are they letting it happen on purpose?
You and I are skirting on that topic, and yeah, I asked that question because I do think they're letting it happen on purpose. I mean, I hear there's anecdotal evidence that fires occur every so often, but I was trying to bring objective facts to this, and the facts don't back up what's going on right now. I mean, there's been less and less fires every year. That's one fact. We have satellite imagery that shows there's no lightning strikes that are no more than usual. But then we do. I even question: is there more hectares being burned? Maybe there isn't. But if I believe all the facts, this year is an anomaly. And nothing explains the anomaly other than, I have to put weight to the 15-minute cities that people are talking about, rich people wanting to buy land in Hawaii. That's a super valid argument in Hawaii. Pure incompetence. Fire hydrants being inoperable because the power system's not working. I mean, we're hearing horrible stories. Like, people don't want to evacuate because they've heard horrible stories of what happens. You're asking people to leave their homes behind and trust the authorities to protect your assets.
Forget
it. People are saying bullshit. I'm going to stay behind, and I'll sign the waiver. I'm not evacuating, and I'll fight my own battle. So
apparently there's fights over this, and people are being told that they can't. No waiver signing. You can't stay.
People are being arrested almost at gunpoint, trying to get back to their homes and being forced out of their homes. It's like, let me sign the waiver. I'll sign the waiver. I'm staying here. We talked about this when it was happening in Alberta. I mean, in northern Alberta, in the small towns where the fires were occurring, you're talking a population of highly trained, tradespeople that own water pumps and trucks and bulldozers and stuff like that. And they can protect their houses better than the government can do it for them. So, I'm really... I'm seeing a collapse of the narrative on this one. I mean, this is one where, this whole climate change, people are like, bullshit, bullshit. It's enough of that.
Well, and that's the thoughts of a lot of people here. And here's some of the stats on fire suppression, things that are being underfunded at the moment. And we have here even British Columbia, and this is Ontario's Premier Doug Ford blames campfires on the fire ban, but his as the opposition has noted, his government cut the province's emergency firefighting budget by 67%. Ontario is not alone. Alberta did the same. They went from 130 million in 2018-2019 to 100 million this year. And even British Columbia's normally left-wing New Democratic Party, obviously the writer of this article seems to be a left-winger, government has been remiss in wildfire reparation. And this is egregious. It went from $801 million fighting forest fires in 2021. This year's budget is $32 million. And this is where this state of emergency has been declared here in British Columbia. And it's sickening to see that. Well, I mean, this is where I get really kind of angry about the whole situation. They're breathing down our necks about we need to pay more for global warming. Whether you believe global warming is true or not, this is the rhetoric and this is the purpose for it. And what are they doing with that when they say that this is caused by global warming?
Yeah, if you're collecting billions of dollars from us, then buy a couple of Canadian CF-224s or whatever those planes are. I mean, we are a world-class producer of water bombers, and the next available water bomber for Canadian purchase is like 2030. We're selling them all over the world, but not to ourselves. And then that's the other thing too. people are volunteering. Other states and jurisdictions are volunteering to send their stuff over here, and we are hearing that our government is saying, "No, thanks, we don't need your help." So
unbelievable. It just makes me think that this is
yeah.
just to fuel the narrative. It's fuel for the fire of their own narrative, and that's really sad because it's ruining people's lives and putting people in real danger.
It's a shame, but yes, I mean, there's been a lot, we're going to go round and round. There's a lot of stories this week that are going on that don't make the Liberals look good. And so they need a couple of things to distract.
Well, this is a perfect segue then to talk about Guy Beau, the environmental minister. And well, I'll let you take the reins on this one because you know about this.
Well, he's in China this week. Mm-hmm. He's actually in China. And then he's part of, I don't know how to describe it, but he's, it's one of these Chinese banks, let's call it, or something like that. He's part of a group, and he's a director of this Chinese organization, and we're aligning ourselves with China, and he's going over there to represent Canada, more than represent Canada, and the Chinese, like, on all these things, set aside Chinese interference in elections. Let's just talk about China's contribution.
It really is hard to set that one aside when you have an MP sitting on a board.
Let's just talk about China's contribution to global warming, if you believe in that. No, let's rephrase it. China's emissions. And so he's going over there to collaborate with China. The only Canadians who should be going to China right now should be Canadians going there to chastise China for what they're doing, not to cuddle up with them and be friends with them and provide more interference. So and Godbout is the guy. He's the one who is responsible for the climate in this country. So, and he's always talking about leading by example. Canada on the world scale, we're like less than 2% of emissions, but supposedly we're going to lead by examples. China puts that, whatever we put out, China puts out in about, a week. So, and despite all that, I want transparency. What's he over there for, and what's the accomplishment, and what's the press release, and what's going to come out of it? We're never going to find out anything. We're never going to find out anything.
But what we do know is that while he's over there buddying up with China and joining in some of their conferences and organizations, we've ramped up our coal production so we can send it over there. And again, this is it's the narrative. So, if you think that global warming is a global thing, us doing it in Canada, stopping fossil fuels, isn't going to help when we're shipping en masse. We increased by almost 400% how much coal we're sending over to China. We're not doing the liquid natural gas yet because that's been stifled by this government and the government of British Columbia as well. But this is the thing. And of course, as we were ramping up the coal production, we had our premier in British Columbia, John Horgan. He stepped down from his position, retired, and he jumped right on the coal board. It just shows the corruption and
board of tech. Yeah, he's on the board. He's on the board of directors of Tech Cominco or whatever, selling coal to the
Chinese.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and I'm gonna give you a segue into another story, but I just saw a video on Jordan Peterson talking about he talks about this. I mean, and I'll repeat it. We produce about 2% of the world's emission. The Chinese do like 30 or 40%. They do that in like what we produce in a year, they produce in a week. Yeah. So, and this whole idea that we need to lead by example, you try and lead by example for a while, but after a while, if nobody's following you, then you're just being a fool. And the Chinese are not going to follow our example. They don't have a carbon tax. They didn't ban plastics. They didn't ban, man, they're building a 5,000 megawatt power plant every 3 weeks because the Chinese want what we have had for 50 years. So,
yeah. At risk of sounding like Donald Trump on this one, they're eating our lunch. That's what they're doing. They're getting everything from us. We're making sacrifices. They're making none. And at the end of the day, it's really doing us no favors in the process of this. But you segued to Jordan Peterson, and that's in the news today. Ontario court ruled against Jordan Peterson, and they're upholding his social media training order. This is something that I covered on the channel here, but essentially he's
Clyde, I want to be on that class, man. I want to be in that class. If Jordan Peterson goes back to a re-education seminar put on by his professional organization, I want to sit there and watch him make, like, who's the poor sucker who's going to get tapped on the shoulder and told you need to re-educate Jordan Peterson? Can you imagine? I mean, I know there's somebody willing to do it, because there are people who are absolutely offended by everything, who will literally try and stand in front of Jordan and tell Jordan how he's wrong. But between you and me, I want to be in that class if that happens.
I'd have to get the names, but there is a series of organizations that are all tied into it. One of them was a LGBT organization. They're an activist group. They're part of this. They're part of their re-education here, and this is what it is re-education. I've compared it to the struggle sessions in China, and I don't think that comparison is off, because the struggle sessions, for those that don't know what happened during the Cultural Revolution, they would take dissidents, people who spoke out against the government, and they would shame them. They would bring them in front of all their peers, and they would force their peers, at the fear of being persecuted themselves, they would get them to turn on their fellow citizens and spew vitriol, beat them, do all kinds of things against them. And this is a modern day version of this, and it's happening right now.
Yeah, and then in the case of Jordan, he's such a powerful individual, and he kind of dug his heels in, but I'm surprised that his association dug their heels in as hard as they have, I mean, I'll give you a personal story. Something lesser but similar happened to me. So I'm a member of the Association of Engineers in the province that I work in, and somebody on Twitter complained, hey, Marty's reposting information that they disagreed with. In my case, it was related to COVID. So I was being censored by Twitter and other groups, but then I had somebody file a complaint against me. Luckily, in my case, that my organization just reached out, did a common sense call and said, hey, Marty, what's going on with this? I'm like, dude, I got, 40,000 followers and people get upset at what I'm saying. And they like, yeah, okay, we'll just, done. Then, I mean, I'm a nobody, but but I'll tell you, when you get that letter or that phone call and saying, we're kind of investigating you, or we got a complaint, you get that sinking feeling in your gut. So, and Jordan, his organization, he's being made an example of, but what really scares me about the case of Jordan, first of all, I hope he fights them longer and harder. Mm-hmm. What scares me is that, look at the lengths they're willing to go against somebody like Jordan Peterson. So they're not backing down on Jordan Peterson. So what does that do for Joe Schmuck without resources, right? I mean, so the average little Canadian can get so pushed around. And that's an example that we talked about a while ago too. Like, people say, what freedoms have we lost? These are the kinds of freedoms we've lost. I mean, this is a real freedom. Like, they're threatening, and Jordan said, I don't care. I don't practice psychology. And just like I don't practice engineering, but I've been an engineer for 35 years. And for the association to sort of, do a veiled threat and say, we're going to not allow you to use the term engineer. I mean, like, you're attacking the core of who I am. And Jordan's saying the same thing. Like, he doesn't practice. He's a millionaire many times over in the last 20 years, but he's a psychologist, a clinical practicing psychologist, and he just doesn't want to be pushed around. So, this battle's not over, and I hope Jordan keeps fighting them. What's your thoughts? I mean, what's he got left to fight? How's he going to fight?
Well, I think the whole fight here is for, like you said, like the every person who's just, that is their job, that's their livelihood, and that's what this is the threat. This is what they're trying to use him as an example to say to all the other people out there, don't you dare speak out against us, because if you do, we're coming for you, and we've got the resources to come for you. And it's not it's only a matter of time before this starts happening again. Like you said, with the Association of Engineers. What about the Industry Training Authority? This is Canada wide. All tradespeople have Red Seal certification through the Industry Training Authority. Are they going to be able to start taking that away from mechanics, plumbers, electricians? All of this is where we get into dangerous territory.
It's coercion. I mean, we've seen the lengths that our governments are willing to go to coerce us or to force us into submission. Into, we saw it with COVID. We saw it with, COVID. Like, it's no different. Take the vaccine or wear the mask, or you won't be allowed to work, or you won't be allowed to fly, or you won't be allowed to visit your grandmother in the old age home. And then done under the guise of like, oh, it's for the better good and everything else. I'm like, what's the better good of an individual like Jordan Peterson talking openly on his own platform? Yeah, he didn't slander anyone. He didn't libel anyone. He didn't they just don't like what he's saying, period.
And if his ideas are bad, then they'll be seen as bad in the public eye. But this is the thing. They're trying to socially engineer everything, and that never works. It never works. No. It never worked before. And
they're going after the wrong guy in this case. Wow.
Well, and it's amazing how full circle it's come, because this all started with the hippies in the 60s, right? And they in academic institutions, and they just wanted.
This is where I love you, man. Well, okay, I want to see where you're going with this one. Keep going.
So everybody went lefty in these institutions, and then they forced this along, and it's gone along its inevitable, trajectory. We've got, social change. We need to be more open, more, and then it's like at a point, it's like, you be open or else. And now we're like, if you don't say the right thing, then you'll be subjugated to all this stuff. And now the counterculture is on the right. Now the counterculture is speaking out against the same flower power people in its inevitability. And this is why cultural shifts happen. And this is what we're witnessing right now. I really believe that.
Yeah, happens once a generation. I mean, it's really sad that humans don't learn from history. Like they just don't. Like, history repeats itself. I mean, everything that's going on right now, we can find exact examples of this 40 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It just repeats over and over. Yeah. Well.
Speaking of things that are repeating over and over, you brought up COVID, and it looks like that there's a concerted effort to bring it back. And this really broke, and it became a story because we heard stories of universities and other institutions trying to bring back because they claim they saw cases, which is just like, what, the common cold anymore? Like nobody cares. There's news reports now saying that there's a new variant that might be coming out this fall, but Alex Jones did an announcement that he said he had a whistleblower from, I believe it was the TSA, and he said that no, this is a plan. They're planning this. And I mean, everyone's got the Alex Jones was right jar, and it's overflowing at this point. The amount of times that he's been absolutely right. We know why they tried to get him out of the media space, and they weren't even, they were effective, but they could never stop this guy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Alex Jones is the first canary, and then if I hear it from Chris Sky, then I know it's real. So I'm still waiting for Chris. No, I'm joking aside. We've all heard it. I mean, there's already there's an old age home near Edmonton that already made the news for implementing putting back some mandates, and they said, well, they had one case. I'm like, holy smokes, one case. Okay, so when an individual room like that does it, that's fine. I've heard similar stories where people claim that there's increasing cases across, let's say, the province. Well, I call bullshit on that, because then you're privy to information the rest of us haven't seen. Here in Alberta, we're down to publishing COVID information once a month. So the most recent COVID information right now is July 24th. So anybody says they have fresh information, you got it from a source that the rest of us haven't seen. But I'm tweeting about this, and I'm telling people right now, like, start saying immediately you won't comply, and start immediately, get ahead of this one and write letters to your MLAs and call and put it on Facebook. Do whatever you can, but start telling people you're not going to comply. I've been asked the question, do you think they could push a mandate again? Sadly, I think they could, and sadly, I think people would still comply. I mean,
they have the legal framework to do so, and that's what's really scary, because the mootness cases the cases against them were they were told, this is moot. You don't have a case. Go away. Come back when the government has infringed on your rights again, and they can do that.
Yeah, it goes both ways. I mean, we had cases that were dismissed, but we did have a couple of cases. There were a couple of victories. You and I talked here, I think 3 weeks ago, about the Ingram case, where a judge ruled that here in Alberta we had passed the COVID mandates illegally, and so that gives the government an opportunity to adjust their approach and change the law. But while they're doing that, here in Alberta, because of that ruling, several high-level COVID cases have been dropped. So we heard about that. So, your viewers probably heard about the Whistle Stop Cafe. I mean, they stayed open during COVID, and the government went at, another example, like not, Jordan Peterson style, where they made an example of this guy. He was trying to comply by the book. I'm going to do an outdoor movie theater. I'm going to set out a fence. I'm going to spread the tables. I'm going to do everything. And the government just didn't like him. He was pushing the rules, and they didn't like him, and they went after him hard and hit him with fine after fine after fine. Well, his fines have all been dropped because the government decided that case is unwinnable after that small one decision. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the government can adjust their rules, but while they're adjusting the rules, the Whistle Stop Cafe is now have a grounds to file another lawsuit against the government saying what you did to me was illegal. And so, I hope there's more cases like that. I'm rambling.
Well, there is the one case.
I'm trying to convince myself that the government won't try to pass mandates again, because, man, they got a lot to lose by trying it. I can't, for the life of me, see why the government would want to try mandates again other than pure power.
Well, I could tell you one way, one reason why, and I'll get into that, but there was one other case. There was one other case with just over 300 Canadian Armed Forces people, and from they ruled that it was unconstitutional. It was not. It was an illegal mandate to push that on people. There was one other person that fought in the against the mandates, and that's Tamara Litch. And here she is modeling off some of the merch that I have now at the merch store. You guys asked for it.
Oh, good for
and
you.
Here it is. This is merchandise from Clyde Do Something. I'll leave a link in the description down below. Go check it out. Get a hat, get a mug, get a shirt or whatever. I made sure to get good quality products. I don't like to sell people stuff that I think is going to be crap. I ordered a bunch of it myself, tried it on before sending it out and okaying it. So check it out. It's only a zip up hoodie. If you like pullovers, forget it. I only do zip up hoodies, so enjoy that. But that's
her case is coming up, right? When's her hearing?
In September, this September, with Chris Barber. They're being tried together, and that's the case of that. But also, I think, and this is again my conspiratorial side of me, is looking at it like Trudeau's numbers are tanking in the polls, and the Conservatives are coming up way, way high. It was at, I think, 338 was recently saying
they're in majority territory right now. They're in total majority territory.
So they were saying there's a 48% chance of a minority Conservative government, a 43% chance of a majority Conservative government, and only an 8% chance of a minority Trudeau Liberal government. And that's where it stands. If there was an election today based on the polling, of course this is polling, it's not real elections when the real election happens, but this is enough for a lot of the conspiratorial people to say, hey, maybe this is a reason for a comeback for COVID, because not only do we have the Canadian election, but we have the American election coming up soon. And it was COVID that not only helped Trudeau get back in, but it also helped Biden get in. And you can call it how you want if that was a free and fair election. I don't know. All I know is that...
I see where you're going with this. I mean, COVID allows the government to go back to, in-camera sessions instead of a live parliament, allows to continue maybe not the full-blown Emergency Measures Act, but the Medical Measures Act, which still gives them some pretty powerful...
Absentee voting, that is a big thing.
Absentee voting, things like that. But, and speaking of the Liberals, I mean, they went on a retreat in PI this week. Everybody except Guilbeault, I guess, he's in China. But and their retreat just ended. And did you see, like, they just the country's it's a dumpster fire, right? 40-year high inflation, unaffordable housing, whatever. Like, you name it, it's wrecked. And they came back with their list of recommendations, and it's the same old tired repeat. They have nothing new, man. They are completely exhausted. Like, we're going to work for Canadians and we're going to help. Apparently, they asked Minister of Finance Anand, like, can you or Treasury Minister, can you guys find $15 billion in saving? And they can't even find $15 billion in saving. I'm like, stop giving it to Ukraine and you'll get like $8 billion right there. But their list of highlight was still, we'll help Canadians with $10 daycare, the child, climate rebates, blah blah blah, grocery rebates, and like, it's like, wow, like, it just, they're exhausted. They have nothing new, nothing original, and I think we are seeing the dying days of the Liberal the current Liberal government. But like, I think I'm going to get proven wrong. I mean, I was predicting an election in September, October, November, maybe. Now I'm changing my tune. Maybe Trudeau will hang on for the rest of his mandate. He has 2 more years.
So this is an interesting thing. I had Northern Perspective on Friday of last week, and he brought up a really good point, and that is that there's going to be some changing of the demographics or changing of the jurisdictions where people's ridings are, and because of that, that's coming up, and it apparently it's a procedural thing, and it's really going to shake up where a lot of the seats are I think in British Columbia and some other places, and it has
a demographic shift because of people, or redrawing
of the maps, and it's because of people. So in the U.S. they call it gerrymandering, and the concept is every once in a while they'll be able to, the politicians will come in and move the map around, and they'll try to work it out in their favor. But in Canada it works differently. It works based on demographics and who lives where and how many people live there, and every once in a while it just comes up for redrawing, and it's apparently coming up later this year, and this may actually eliminate some seats in the NDP, and it may eliminate some other seats, and it may cause a falling of the coalition that's being upheld.
Okay, so we're not talking. So of the 338 ridings, there'll still be 338s, but they redraw the boundaries. So Edmonton
some seats will be gone altogether.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
Apparently this might be the case. Some seats might be gone altogether, and some other places might end up getting a seat because of this. And the maps are being redrawn. And so Cypher from Northern Perspective has this theory that it may actually be the case that it might be inevitable that in the spring we might see an election. That's an argument. I'm willing to entertain it because it sounds a lot more viable than any of the other arguments that I've heard so far, except for we're going to stick it out until 2025, and that's kind of where I was.
No, I mean my argument for them abandoning ship is that like I said before, the news just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, I'm going to bet money that there's an interest rate increase around the corner. I mean, I got a letter today from my bank, and takes a little bit to figure out what they were saying, but I have a line of credit. So I have a line of credit, and my house is used as collateral against my line of credit. And it was just saying that based on events going on, they're diminishing the amount of collateral. So let's say you got $100,000 line of credit and you're applying a $400,000 house, so that's 25%. They're saying we're going to decrease that number. So basically, what the bank is telling me is they're scared that the collateral is going to be worthless in a while from now. That's anyways, it's just an interpretation.
No, that's a really good point, because I was going to bring this up, and this is an article from Bloomberg Economics, and they have an economist that's saying Canada is likely sitting on the largest housing bubble of all time, and this is a strategist who's saying this, and it looks like it's about to pop, and they have all the clear indicators there to say that is the case, that we won't be hanging on to this economy, or a lot of people with debts won't be hanging on to their assets.
And like you and I have said, I mean, it doesn't care what Chrystia Freeland says the cost of living is. If Chrystia Freeland can tell me all day long that inflation is only 3%, I don't give a shit what you think, Chrystia. I'm going to go with the real experts. When my bank down the street starts increasing the interest rate on their own and sends me a letter saying we're going to devalue the amount of collateral you're using, I'm going like, yeah, I'm gonna believe them. Just like you can tell me whatever you want about the the harm done by vaccines or not, but when my insurance company starts sending me a note and saying, hey, we're revising our medical records and we want to know were you vaccinated or not. When your insurance company asks you that, then there's something going on. So don't all to the viewers, don't always listen. Actually, your viewers are smart. They don't listen to the government. Listen to the banks, watch the stock markets, and those are the indicators of where. But back to the election, I think there's so much bad news coming down the road that the Liberals are going to want to take a chance and maybe run an election right now. They have a potential chance But if they wait, let's say a year from now, the news is going to be so bad down the road that they will have zero chance. So, take a chance at 50% or wait, because to me, between you and me, the news for Canadians is just going to get uglier and uglier as the next 6 months progress.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I like to be the guy who, when it does happen, I can point back at the videos and say, I was saying it. I was saying what was gonna happen. I know Peter Schiff was.
Yeah, you're on the record. Do you think it's going to be a 0.5%
increase? Yeah,
increase, and I think you're right. I mean, it's not going to be 0.25%. It's going to be 0.5%. It's going to be a big number.
I think it's going to be a big number, and I'm really concerned at the direction that it's going, because I know someone indirectly who's in agriculture and who spoke to some people in a position to know. And they were saying, watch out, because the interest rates are going big. They're going big.
Hey, I just mentioned Chrystia Freeland and her comments on inflation. You want to talk about Chrystia Freeland? Did you watch her speech?
I did a video, and talked about this.
The University of Boston. Oh my God, that was so cringe.
So it was brutal, and what was revealing in it was she was saying a lot of things that we haven't heard in a long time spoken publicly from someone on the left, and that's the calls for the end of an era and the beginnings of a new era where we no longer see the workings, or we're no longer seeing any benefit from capitalist democracies, she said. And this is the rhetoric. It's scary rhetoric, because it's coming.
But she was repeating, I think is it her thesis, or it's something she did as a scholar or whatever. I mean, she wrote a book, and she's basically like, that was not a commencement speech, right? Between you and me, that was not a commencement speech. I mean, when basically I felt sorry for those poor students. It wasn't a rah, 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 go out there and you conquer the world. She basically gave them some political essay that some second-rate author wrote, and I think it's her. I mean, she was regurgitating platitudes that I mean, the audience, and I'm trying to find the whole video. All I could find was two-minute segments. So I watched 4 minutes of it, but that was enough to make me sick,
Well, it's funny, actually, because you speak about the writing. Anyone who went to school and studied writing, or even cares about writing or reads stuff and doesn't want to read bad writing, this one, it was literally a speech made up of, I think she just Googled a bunch of quotes, and then she gave her
GPT, probably.
She just took a bunch of quotes and then said, this person said this quote, and here's how this is going to work in the future. This is another quote, and this is how my take on that quote. Here's a quote I disagree with, and I have a different take. It was really genuinely bad writing, but I found revealing was her opinions on basically that she's part of a class of people who want to change the world, and they want to do it, and they want to put the world into this new image, and it's ideological, and it's utopian thinking.
I mean, she's so ideologically driven. Like, she was in PI this week, and she was asked a question. So, for instance, a reporter, and that's another good thing. Some reporters are starting to get a little bit more bold and asking better questions. So that's good. But she was in PI, and a reporter literally said, "Hey, tourism here is super critical to this island, and people come to this island by car." So now that there's a bridge, and they drive all over the place. And then the reporter said, your carbon tax is really threatening our tourist industry, which is one of the key industries of PEI. My God, she skirted around that one. She
didn't even answer it. She didn't even try to skirt it.
She basically wanted to say, you're fucked, and that's just the way it is. I know that's what she wanted to do, because those people are victims of her policy, and she had no sympathy for them. She tried to show some sympathy. She can't even show sympathy. I mean, she looks absolutely, I don't like totally making fun of people's appearances, but she looked like 100% constipated, and like she was lying. I mean, her body language was bullshit. And I'm still upset that reporters dig, but then pull back. It's like, please keep digging, ask that follow-up question, and don't let him get off with this,
Well, exactly. And I have to show, I'm just going to show that.
Show it.
I'm not going to play the audio, but the body language that you're talking about, and just like the way she's listening to the question, she can't stop moving. She's jeering around, jittering. It's it's just unbecoming. It's unprofessional. I, of course, put out there asking, why does Christia Freeland squirm so much? Wrong answers only. Sure did get a lot of wrong answers. I got a whole lot of wrong answers. But yeah, it's just bizarre at the body language of a person who's.
I gotta look up old videos of her as a media radio personality. Like, was she like that? I don't think so. I mean.
Well, she was in the radio, so I don't know.
Oh no, she was a TV host. Like she was. Yeah. So I mean, if she interviewed me doing that, I'd be sitting there in the interview going like, "Are you okay? Like, you're gonna have a stroke or what's going on?"
Yeah, I get nervous around people moving like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and then the funny thing is, I said she looks like she needs to go take a shit. Sorry to say that, but then people like. So now, poor Christia Freeland. What else did we learn about her this week? She got clocked doing 142 an hour and stopped in Alberta between Grand Prairie and Peace River. So that's her neck of the woods. She came to Alberta this past week. I didn't like her photo op with Danielle. I thought, I made a comment on that. She met with Danielle Smith. Danielle humored her and did a photo op. I thought Danielle gave her a little bit too much praise, but whatever. I'm not the politician. But Freeland got caught speeding, and that's what everybody said. Maybe she just in a rush to get to the toilet. I don't know.
Well, so CBC changed the story. Not even 24 hours later, said she was speeding by 130 something. They brought the number down to make it look not so bad. In most provinces, if you're 40 over, that's considered stunt driving. You can have your license pulled right on the spot, and that's it.
Here in Alberta, it would have been. Yeah, you're right. She probably got something less, or maybe we'll find out later. But it's an automatic court appearance. 40 over is an automatic. You might not pull your license, but it's a court appearance. You can't just. It's not just pay the fine. You have to show up in front of the judge. And the judge issues the fine. There, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was reading that about in Ontario because it depends on the province, right? So every province is different.
Yeah.
I remember in British Columbia them telling us like no tolerance for stunt driving. In Ontario, I was reading it yesterday that it's a minimum $2,000 fine, but can go up to $16,000 if the judge chooses. So yeah, it's a criminal offense going stunt driving.
She got let off. Yeah, I'm sure she got a break. At professional courtesy. I mean, I'm surprised. Maybe not. We'll find out.
I'm looking forward to some of those professional courtesies one day, especially if that COVID stuff comes back. I'm just gonna take my professional courtesy today. Thanks.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a cop, and I've often told him that I'm like, do I get don't you have little cards that you can hand out? Like, don't I get 2 get out of jail cards free? And he's like, no, but he gave me good advice. I'll give advice to your viewers.
Okay.
And, what my buddy said is definitely don't stay in the left lane and speed in the left lane. You're going to get nailed. So if you want to go fast, just weave in and out of traffic. So get in, use it properly, use their left lane to pass. As long as you're doing that, they'll leave you alone. If you cruise in the left lane doing 140, and speaking of, I know of where Freeland was driving, and that is a stretch of the world. I mean, northern Alberta, there's some pretty long highways. I've probably been clocked doing in the 140 range or higher in that part of the world because there's. I mean, you put cruise control and then a bungee cord on your steering wheel and it just goes straight.
Well, I think the best point that came out of this whole thing was the fact that cars are much less efficient in that kilometers range. So they would be using a lot more fuel and it would create a lot more emissions on the planet, and you wouldn't want to be a hypocrite and go outside of the efficiency.
Yeah. Fuel consumption is not linear. So, your fuel consumption at 80 kilometers an hour is X, and at 100 kilometers, it's not like 20% more. It's like it's the square root of, or the square of. So it gets really fast. So if you're doing 160 or something like that, you're not just doubling your fuel. You can watch your gauge go down. And in her case, no sympathy because she's the one who is, still insisting that she doesn't own a car, that it takes the train everywhere and the bike. And we saw the photo ops with the bike, the same bike that's been recycled. Look at that. Find those photo ops and look at the bike. The bike that Freeland rides around and does pictures on is the same bike as Climate Barbie Catherine McKenna was using.
Oh, so they all have
they have a little fleet of red Schwinn bicycles with the big fenders and the baskets on the back and the bling bling or whatever. So, God.
Oh boy. Yeah. Anyway, so that's this week in Canada. Marty, where can people find you?
Sitting at home. No. YouTube on Marty Up North. You Google Marty Up North on Twitter, please, and on YouTube. On Twitter, just want to just a personal note. I'm probably going to hit 50,000 followers this week. So
nice.
Yeah. It's and then I don't know. I made this. I was always against getting that blue mark on Twitter. I don't know why, but the whole idea of paying to talk kind of. But at the same time, I do make money on other social platforms and stuff like that. And Elon, I think, took a big risk in buying the platform and bringing us back to a more less censorship. So in kind of a sense, I think I'm going to at 50,000. I said I'd get my blue mark, so I'm probably going to get my blue mark.
Nice.
So
yeah, I like paying for the services that I use. If I use a service a lot, I'll hand my my cash over happily. I use YouTube a lot, so I have YouTube Premium. I use Twitter a lot, so I use Twitter Premium, and that's just how I score that card. There I am.
And I hop on somebody else's subscription for Disney Plus.
Oh,
thank you.
Freeland. No, yeah, Freeland. I don't do Disney Plus or Netflix anymore. Not.
I'm a Star Wars freak, so I gotta have my Disney Plus so I can watch.
I got the old VHSs, man. I'll let you borrow them.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome, man. Awesome.
All right, everybody, go check out Marty Up North, and we'll see you next week or the next one.
Cheers, everyone.